July 20th, 1969, more than 600 million people around the world sat glued to their televisions. Humanity was about to achieve what had once seemed impossible, landing on the moon. Neil Armstrong stepped down onto the lunar surface and declared, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." But here's the thing, this wasn't just about science. The moon landing was a high-stakes chapter in the Cold War, a propaganda victory in the battle between the United States and the Soviet Union. And decades later, it also became one of the most famous subjects of conspiracy theories. So today, we are diving into the Cold War rivalry that made the moon landing possible and exploring why so many people still question if it even happened. To understand why America went to the moon, we need to rewind to the 1950s. The Cold War wasn't just about nuclear weapons and military dominance, it was about prestige, technology, and ideology. The Soviet Union struck first. In 1957, they launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, a shiny metal ball, just 23 inches wide. But it shocked the United States. For Americans, hearing the beeping signal from Sputnik overhead was terrifying. It meant the Soviets were ahead in rocket technology and possibly capable of launching nuclear weapons from space. Then, in 1961, the Soviets scored another major victory. Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. He orbited the Earth and instantly became a hero worldwide. The US was embarrassed. Something had to change. That's when President John F. Kennedy stepped in. In May 1961, he addressed Congress and boldly declared, "This nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth." It was audacious. At that time, America had barely managed to send one astronaut on a short 15-minute flight. But Kennedy's challenge wasn't just about science. It was about proving capitalism, democracy, and American ingenuity were stronger than Soviet communism. Thus, the space race became the new battlefield of the Cold War. The 1960s saw a whirlwind of progress. The United States poured billions into NASA's Apollo program. Thousands of engineers, scientists, and astronauts worked day and night. Before Apollo, NASA ran two stepping stone programs, Project Mercury and Project Gemini. These tested the fundamentals, launching astronauts, maneuvering in orbit, docking spacecraft, and surviving in space for extended periods. But the real breakthrough came with the mighty Saturn V rocket beast, taller than the Statue of Liberty, producing 7.5 million pounds of thrust. It remains one of the most powerful machines ever built. And here's the thing. It wasn't just about rockets. The Apollo program represented something bigger: American identity during a time of crisis. The Vietnam War was raging. Civil rights protests filled the streets. The nation was divided. But the dream of reaching the moon united people, if only for a moment. By July 1969, after years of trial and tragedy included, the Apollo 1 fire that killed 3 astronauts, the stage was set for Apollo 11. On July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 launched from Kennedy's Space Center. On board, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. 4 days later, Armstrong and Aldrin descended in the lunar module, Eagle, while Collins orbited above. The landing was anything but smooth. The onboard computer overloaded with alarms. Armstrong had to manually pilot the craft to avoid boulders and craters. With just 20 seconds of fuel left, he guided Eagle safely down. At 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time, Armstrong stepped onto the moon. His words, simple but iconic, echoed across the planet. A few minutes later, Buzz Aldrin joined him, describing the surface as magnificent desolation. Together, they planted the American flag, conducted experiments, and collected samples. Meanwhile, Michael Collins, alone in orbit, later said, "I wasn't feeling lonely. I felt awareness, anticipation, satisfaction, confidence, almost exultation." The United States had done it. The space race was effectively over. The Soviets, despite their early victories, never managed to land a cosmonaut on the moon. The moon landing was more than a scientific triumph, it was a Cold War victory. President Richard Nixon even called Armstrong and Aldrin from the White House in what he described as the most historic phone call ever made. For America, this was a statement to the world democracy had triumphed. The moon landing showcased American technology, determination, and vision. The Soviet Union quietly abandoned its manned lunar program. While they excelled in space stations and robotic missions, the symbolic race was lost. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. Despite overwhelming evidence, some people believe the moon landing was faked. The theory first gained traction in the 1970s, fueled by the Vietnam War, Watergate, and a growing distrust of government. A book card, "We Never Went to the Moon," suggested NASA staged the landing in a Hollywood studio. Conspiracy theorists point to the waving flag, forgetting that it had a metal rod inside to make it stand out. They question the shadows, ignoring that multiple light sources exist on the moon, including reflected sunlight. They argue that no stars are visibly, forgetting that cameras were set for bright lunar daylight, not faint starlight. NASA has repeatedly debunked these claims. Independent evidence, like lunar rocks, studied by scientists worldwide, laser reflectors still bouncing signals from the moon, and even modern lunar satellites photographing the Apollo landing sites, proves the missions were real. Yet conspiracy theories persist. Why? Because they're compelling stories. They feed on mistrust of authority, the idea of a grand secret hidden from the public. In an age of viral misinformation, these narratives spread faster than ever. More than 50 years later, the moon landing remains one of humanity's greatest achievements. It wasn't just a Cold War stunt, it expanded our understanding of science, technology, and our place in the universe. Today, NASA and other nations are planning to return to the moon with new programs like Artemis, aiming to build bases and eventually launch missions to Mars. The 1969 moon landing showed us what humanity can achieve when driven by competition, vision, and determination. And while conspiracy theories may never disappear, one truth remains undeniable. On that summer night in 1969, humanity took its first step onto another world. The Cold War may have fueled the race, but the moon belongs to all of us. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, humanity can reach us for the stars and actually touch them.